Just 3 years ago, Baylor went 12-2 and won the Big 12. But in the last 2 years, Baylor has won just 9 games. And now Dave Aranda finds himself in a make-or-break year, entering his 5th season in Waco. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. So glad you could join us today to break down the Baylor Bears, predicting their schedule and record for this upcoming season. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of those expert picks, and home to our weekly newsletters, free to sign up for. Go check it out. We want you to subscribe, want you to take advantage of that for extra news and analysis, and to become a member of our GE Nation as we expand it from coast to coast. So let's take a look at Baylor, guys. I really love Dave Aranda. I really love this team. It was hard to see Baylor go 3-9 last year, managing 2 conference wins over UCF and Cincinnati, and suffering 3 heartbreaking one-possession losses to Utah, Houston, and West Virginia. Very well could have been a bowl team, but you kind of knew Baylor was going to be in for a rough season when they got torched at home in the season opener to Texas State. Texas State, a great team last year, obviously, but you knew it was going to be a long year, and that's exactly what it was. But this year, Baylor is going to be different. Aranda recognized the issues, and he pretty much did a giant overhaul on the coaching staff, overhaul through the transfer portal. This team has a lot of big-time transfers coming in, hoping to get Baylor back to their winning ways. 10 starters back on offense after averaging just 23.1 points per game. They've got a new offensive coordinator in Jake Spavital. He's going to move it to more of a spread offense. It's going to suit Baylor very well. It's going to suit their new quarterback, DeQuan Finn, very well. Finn transferring in from Toledo, where he threw for over 7,000 yards and 63 touchdowns and rushed for over 1,800 yards during his career with the Rockets. They've got Dominic Richardson and Richard Reese both returning at running back, which is massive. They've got their top wide receiver in Monterey Baldwin returning alongside Keytron Jackson, and a pretty solid offensive line to go along with that as well. Baylor's offense was atrocious last year, and chalk it up to some injuries, of course, and just poor schemes in general. They're going to be light years better this year. You could argue they could be almost a touchdown better this year. Defensively, that's Dave Aranda's strength, right? He's one of the best defensive minds in the game. At least he was for a very long time. 9 starters are back. Last year, Baylor gave up over 33 points per game for their worst mark under Dave Aranda. 33.3 points per game and 421 yards per game. Both of those, the worst marks since Aranda arrived in Waco. But now their top 5 tacklers return. 8 of their top 10 tacklers return, led by Matt Jones, who had 8.5 tackles for a loss last year. Jackie Marshall is back at the defensive end after missing all of last year with an injury. This is a team that up front is going to do a lot better against the run after giving up 185 rushing yards per game. So they're going to be much better and stronger in the front 7. And the secondary has 4 starters back, led by Caden Jenkins and the return of Lorando Johnson, who left Baylor to go to Arkansas and is now back in Waco. Baylor should be significantly better on both sides of the ball, but can they get to a bowl game? We take a look at the schedule. I think they open up 1-0 with a win over Tarleton State, and then they lose to Utah in a non-conference game in Salt Lake City. Remember, because these teams scheduled a home-and-home series, and then obviously Utah joined the Big 12, they kept the home-and-home, kept it a non-conference. All good. So Kansas State and Arizona are doing the exact same thing. So even though they are both members of the same conference, this will be viewed and counted as a non-conference game. Will not affect either team in the standings. And I do believe Baylor loses to the Utes in Salt Lake City. Utah going to have their quarterback returning in Cam Rising with one of the best home field advantages in the country. Baylor should have won last year, if we're being honest. A battle of backup quarterbacks in the scalding heat down in Waco. They should have won that game. Were in control for the entire game before a late interception led to the Utah touchdown with 15 seconds left as the Utes escaped 20-13. This year, I don't think it's as close. Utah wins, even though it's a non-conference game. They say, hey, we belong in the Big 12, and we can win the Big 12 in our first year. So Baylor drops that game. They do beat Air Force in a rematch of the 2022 Armed Forces Bowl, which Baylor lost 30-15. Air Force, though, dealing with a lot of new pieces, including an entirely new offensive line. If Baylor can shut that triple option down, which they will, I believe, as Air Force isn't going to have nearly as much push as they need, they'll win this game. They do just that. They're 2-1, and I think they lose to Colorado to be 2-2. Colorado, obviously a team that had a lot of question marks. Both these teams are loaded with transfers. Colorado rebuilding their team through the transfer portal. Dave Aranda and the Bears doing the same, but obviously just not getting nearly enough attention for it, or as much attention as Colorado got for it. But I look at this game, guys. The Buffaloes have home field advantage. I like Shedeur Sanders more than DeQuan Finn right now, so they've got I wouldn't say significant, but a decent quarterback advantage. The offensive line for Colorado is going to be significantly better than it was last year. I think they take care of business here. Both these teams, with a lot of new pieces, which ones can gel quicker? Give me the Buffaloes, especially on their home turf. Baylor drops to 2-2, but we'll make them 3-2. Alternating wins and losses here right now with a win at home over BYU, a team that's facing a lot of issues on both sides of the ball, questions on both sides of the ball, but an intriguing storyline here, the BYU's projected quarterback is going to be Gary Bohannon, the former Baylor quarterback. So the Bears getting to face off against him, Bohannon making his return to Waco, but he ultimately loses to the Bears. So Baylor's sitting at 3-2 heading into the month of October. That's pretty dang good. 3-2. They've already matched last year's win total. They've got a conference win already on their resume and a quality win over Air Force as well. So 3-2. I think they lose their next 3, though. So the honeymoon ends relatively quickly. 3-2 to 3-5, losing to Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State. Iowa State, look, they lost to the Cyclones 30-18 last year. Iowa State's going to be even better this year than they were last year. Very experienced, really, really good defensively. They're going to shut down DeQuan Finn in all aspects of the game. And with Ames on their side, home field advantage on their side, very underrated and very difficult place to play, Iowa State takes care of business. And I'd say it's by about the same margin. I can see them win this game by about 10 to 14 points. Then they come on the road to Texas Tech out of the bye week. Baylor has obviously played very well in this series, really has dominated Texas Tech for many, many years. Has not been the case lately necessarily. Baylor's won 4 of the last 6, but they lost 39-14 last year. The Red Raiders also off a bye entering this game. They are going to own, to me, the significant offensive advantage with Baron Morton, some solid wide receivers, and Taj Brooks back at running back. I like the Red Raiders team a lot this year. They fell short of the expectations in 2023. Delayed gratification, maybe, in Lubbock. This could be the year that the Red Raiders meet the expectations that were set before them last year. They lose that game, and then they lose to Oklahoma State. A very winnable game against the Cowboys. Homecoming for Baylor, I should add, in this one. But they've lost 3 straight to Mike Gundy's squad. 3 straight games to the Cowboys. And Oklahoma State, as we know, returns tons of production. They return their quarterback. They return the nation's leading rusher in Ollie Gordon. They return their top 2 pass catchers. They've got a great offensive line. Their defense wasn't all that great last year. Should be significantly better with 4 of their top tacklers returning. So this is an Oklahoma State team that really in this game comes down to the Baylor run defense that allowed 185 rushing yards per game against Ollie Gordon. That's what this game comes down to. And I have more faith right now in Oklahoma State's offense and more faith in Ollie Gordon, who rushed over 1,700 yards last year, than I do right now in Baylor's front 7, which is going to be much improved, but not enough to shut down Gordon and the Cowboys. So they lose that game. People are beginning to panic. They're probably calling for Aranda's head, but rest assured, maybe he'll calm some people down by breaking the winning streak and beating their rival in TCU. Baylor has struggled in this series as of late. They are 1-8 against TCU in the last 9 games. That includes a 42-17 loss last year. But we're talking about Air Force earlier. Talk about TCU now. The Horned Frogs only returned 1 offensive lineman from last season. Yeah, they add some transfers in there, sure, but only 16 career offensive line starts this year were played at TCU last year. So they're going to have to gel pretty quick. And yeah, this game's later in the year. You think they'd have worked out any issues at this point by now. But I think this Baylor defensive line that might struggle the week before against Oklahoma State has a much better game at home now against TCU. They're not losing both home games to Oklahoma State and TCU. They're just not. So if you think they lose to TCU, fine. Let them beat the Cowboys or vice versa. I like their odds better against the Horned Frogs. Horned Frogs team that's going to want to air it out a lot with Josh Hoover is now going up against a very experienced Baylor secondary. Dave Aranda's defense comes through in the clutch. They get the job done. They beat TCU. They've got 4 wins, but to go bowling, they've got to win 2 of their final 3 coming out of the bye week, and 2 of those come on the road. Not ideal. I'll tell you right now, they're not beating West Virginia and Morgantown. Yeah, that week of rest is going to be great. The Bears are going to need it, but it's not going to be enough to beat a West Virginia team that loves to run the ball. A West Virginia team that returns 3 guys that rushed for at least 700 yards last year. Last year, Baylor lost only by 3, right? They held their own against West Virginia, but they allowed 519 yards of offense, 250 of which were on the ground. I don't think the Bears allowed that many rushing yards again, but I do think West Virginia has themselves quite the day on the ground. That dual threat capability of Garrett Green is going to be so tough for the Bears to stop. And the Bears, while improving offensively, no doubt about it, they're not going to have enough to keep up if this game gets kind of high scoring like it did last year. So on the road, they lose to West Virginia. They've got to win their final 2 games to go bowling. And they do. They do. I believe Baylor gets back to the postseason. They should beat Houston. They lost to the Cougars 25-24 in overtime last year. A very mistake-filled game against the Cougars. Now, Houston struggling to find any sort of talent on this roster right now. Year 1 under Willie Fritz, who's a program builder, not a miracle worker. Gonna take some time to build Houston up, just like he did at Tulane. Baylor is the much more experienced team, much more physical team. They get revenge from that heartbreaking loss last year. And then, at home, on senior day, a winner-take-all for the Bears. Their back's against the wall. You win, you go bowling. You lose, you're home for the holidays. They beat Kansas. Their defense maybe turns in one of the best games of the year, knowing that they've got to leave it all out there if they want to go to the postseason. They do just that. They shut down the Kansas offense, which is going to be very, very good. And the Kansas defense, while improving, isn't quite there yet. They struggle containing the dual threat capability of DeQuan Finn, and Baylor wins a narrow, nail-biting game against Kansas to clinch their 6th win of the year and to return to the postseason. Now, look, 6-6 isn't great. That's not 12-2 like we saw 3 years ago. They're not going to contend for a Big 12 title. They're not going to contend for a playoff spot. They might not win 8-9 games that people want, but getting back to the postseason is what Baylor needs to do. That's what they have to do. That's what Dave Aranda has to do, and that's what I believe they will do. In my eyes, that equates to a successful season down in Waco. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to those weekly newsletters. Go sign up for those today, free of charge. Go sign up. We want you to take advantage of that. We want you to take advantage of our expert picks. Some of the best spread picks in the country for one of the lowest prices in the country. Go check it all out and become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.